Hello, freaks, geeks, basement dwellers, and nerds. Welcome to the Nerd Zone. I'm Scruffy, and this is Scruffy Tales. And we are gonna explore the reason why Jem'Hadar and Klingon weapons are justified in a sci-fi setting like Star Trek, where you have shields, phasers, transporters, you name it. Why are their bladed weapons justified, or the weapon designs overall, with their disruptors and what have you? So let's take a look. And we're starting off with the Jem'Hadar. They do follow basically the same basics as the Klingons concerning combat. I just love the design though of the Jem'Hadar, the dinosaur-esque appearance of them. It's just fantastic. But the Jem'Hadar and the Klingons, they follow basically the same basic concepts. And if we're going to take a look at the weapon design, both use small compact weapons, not phaser or disruptor rifles like Cardassians, like the Romulans, or like the Federation. They have this very small compact weapon. It does have a rifle stock, so you can shoulder it for aimed fire, but it's small, it's compact. It's meant to be used in confined spaces, like on board a starship. And you don't need to have effective aim at range with these weapons, since you're going to be fighting in close confined corridors, in tight spaces within rooms and quarters, when you're taking over space stations, starships, and what have you, and if you're landing on a colony and stuff like that. So these weapons are designed to fight at damn near point blank range, and they want to be able to move swiftly and smoothly in tight spaces, in tight quarters, where a longer weapon might be at a disadvantage. So I appreciate the design here, and we'll see that the Klingons are basically following the same mindset here as the Jem'Hadar. But the basic concept of the Jem'Hadar weapon, I like it. It works for an army that intends to storm and board spaceships and space stations. Now, these weapons can also be fitted with bayonets, as we can see here, and they can be used at great effect, obviously up close and personal. Jem'Hadar is not the only species utilizing bayonets on their weapons. We can see it throughout Star Trek with various factions. But here you can see it is a small compact weapon fitted with a bayonet, and again, it is for up close combat when you're in these tight narrow spaces in space stations and starships, and on colonies, on moons, and what have you. You might just push around the corner and the enemy might be right on top of you, and you might have to deal with them in brutal fashion. You can also see here a hint that the Jem'Hadar have some training when it comes to using the weapon in this fashion. You can see that they are both holding the weapon in the same manner, which indicates that they have been trained to grab the end of the buttstock and then press it home into the enemy up close and personal. And so a weapon designed for assaults, you want to push up to the enemy, get into their faces, and kill them at point blank range with these small compact weapons that have a blade attachment that allows you to rush into close combat and overwhelm the enemy. And here we have a bladed weapon, a glaive, sword, glaives, or something of the kind that the Jem'Hadar use. It is the Jem'Hadar version of the Mek'leth, essentially. But as you can see here, based on the design, it is more designed for thrusting than striking, like the Jem'Hadar, like the Klingon Mek'leth is. This does appear to be primarily a big thrusting weapon that can be used to cut, that can be used to strike with. If you're in that situation, but primarily I would say that this is a big thrusting weapon that you're supposed to be using up close in close combat. If you don't have a disruptor or phaser, and if you're well, if it comes down to hand combat and you have nothing else to rely on, this weapon can help you save the day or save your life. And like I said, based on the look of it, I do believe this is primarily used to thrust into enemies like a spear, essentially. And moving over to the Klingons and what is the preferred ranged weapon of the Klingons, it is the disruptor pistol. Again, a small, compact weapon, ideally suited for the tight confines of a space starship, space station, colonies on a moon or something, where you have tight corridors, small rooms, and engagement distances are relatively short. This type of weapon, considering the firepower you can get from phasers and disruptors in the Star Trek universe, you don't really need big rifles. If you have these weapons, they are more than capable of destroying any target in front of you. So it makes perfect sense for the Klingons to rely on these small, compact, and extremely deadly weapons like their disruptor pistols. It allows them to maneuver effectively, smoothly in tight spaces, and you can always bring heavy duty firepower with you wherever you go with these small compact weapons. And just like the Jem'Hadar, the Klingons wants these smaller weapons that are deadly as hell, that you can rely on to be effective in tight confines on board starships and space stations. And of course, we have the iconic Mek'leth used by the Klingons, a bladed weapon ideally suited for striking with the prongs here. You can stab with it with this longer beak. You can strike out with the long edge and what have you. You can attack using both ends to attack, making feints and stuff like that. A weapon well suited for close quarters combat in the tight corridors and tight spaces on board a starship. So just like the Jem'Hadar, the Klingons have this option of, if there are no disruptors around and phasers available, you can always bring out this larger bladed weapon and go in for the brutal kill up close and personal. And this is a weapon that Klingons excel at. They prefer this weapon over any other. This is the weapon of choice that they really want to move in and get that glorious kill up close and personal. So are these bladed weapons actually justified? I think we can agree that the disruptors that they have chosen are indeed justified. The short, compact weapons with a lot of firepower in them. You can easily justify these compact weapons and Klingon disruptors pistols being used on spaceships and what have you. But what about the bladed weapons? Well, tight confines, you come around a corner, you may engage an enemy up close, and in those situations the best trained warrior will win. And in Star Trek, most armies are not training for close combat of this type. They may have some training, but the focus is still using your phasers and relying technology to win. So in that situation, if an enemy like a Klingon or a Jem'Hadar reaches in and gets you in melee, at point blank range, in hand-to-hand combat, their training will ensure that they win that fight. And since most others have not been trained in hand-to-hand combat to the same level, they will be at a significant disadvantage, and the Jem'Hadar and the Klingons will be able to push in and kill the enemy. I mean, this is a brutal kill here where you can see the Jem'Hadar going in with a double bayonet stab to the heart by the looks of it. So Again, same image where they are holding the weapon in the same way. They aim for the same target on the enemy. Both are going for the heart. So quite clearly, the Jem'Hadar, they train to hold the weapon to get the most out of it, and then go straight for the heart, straight for the kill. Might have some tactical what do you call it, opinions on that, but I mean, again, most people in Star Trek do not wear armor, and we're going to come to that later on. So if the Jem'Hadar are used to that, fighting people that do not have armor, of course they're going to go straight for the kill by stabbing the enemy in the heart. And I think that makes sense. It kind of tells you what the Jem'Hadar are used to fighting against. Like most factions in Star Trek, the soldiers and security officers do not wear armor, so the Jem'Hadar will go straight for the kill, stabbing the enemy in the heart. Which is interesting if you take a look here at, this is Core, the Dahar Master disposing of an armored enemy. And take a look what he's doing. He's using that smaller prong of his Mek'leth to go straight in between the shoulder armor and the helmet, straight right at the neck where the armor is the weakest. Sorry for that. And goes straight for the kill. So Klingons, they're used to fighting people in armor. They're used to fighting other Klingons wearing armor. So they will go for the weak spots and will not go for body parts that are usually hidden behind armor. Son of a... This is going to be an awesome video. So Klingons will try and find the chinks in the armor and go in for the kill, utilizing, again, god damn it, the Mek'leth to its fullest extent. And we're going to take a look at that in the end, just how effective the Mek'leth is in this type of combat. And this is one of the reasons why it is also justified. So, had a drink of water there. Hopefully that will clear out the throat. Sorry for that. So, it comes down to, if you train for close combat, you have an immense advantage over the enemy if you reach into close combat, right? Goes without saying. And this is just an example here from Earth's history. 1940, the Winter War. 90 Swedish soldiers were surrounded by 600 Soviet troops behind enemy lines. After a 5-hour-long firefight, the Swedes had run out of ammo. The Soviets prepared to assault the hill the Swedes were defending. But instead of letting the Soviets attack, the Swedes fixed the bayonets and charged. The Soviets were driven from the battle. And when the battle was over, the Swedes had lost 10 men and the Soviets left 200 of their own behind in the snow. And remember, this was a battle with machine guns, rifles, grenades, and submachine guns that was in the end won with a bayonet charge through knee-deep snow. And there are like thousands of similar events throughout history where you can see that a group of people, a group of soldiers that are better trained in hand-to-hand combat, they can win over up against tremendous odds if they do manage to push into close combat, since they have better training and they have the skill sets that the enemies do not have, and that gives the better trained troops a tremendous advantage, and they can win the battle despite being severely outnumbered. And it is an established thing in Star Trek that dampening fields will disable phasers and disruptors. We see it in episodes with Jem'Hadar, we see it in episodes with Klingons, and this episode especially, Blood Oath, it's my favorite Klingon episode of all time, by the way. But in this episode, Dax figures out a way to disable the enemy's disruptors using reconfiguring the ship's disruptors on a bird of prey to bombard a compound from orbit with tetrion particles. The resulting dampening field will disable any energy weapons inside. Although the Klingons will likewise be unable to use their hand disruptors, they will have a significant advantage over the guards in hand-to-hand combat. Right? So we've seen it used in Star Trek, even though it's only used in this episode. But the Klingons, they can use their ships to disable enemy phasers and disruptors. And like it says, and like we see in the episode, it gives the Klingons a massive advantage when they charge in with Mek'leths in hand-to-hand combat, defeating enemies who are not as skilled, not as used to fighting in melee up close and personal. So with considering all of this, that this is a thing, it's an established thing, of course Klingon and Jem'Hadar bladed weapons make perfect sense. If they find themselves in a situation where their enemies have taken out their disruptors, of course they're going to need bladed weapons to defeat the enemy. And likewise, they can use that to their advantage. If they can take out the enemy's weapons, then they can move in like the Klingons for a glorious charge, or the Jem'Hadar can use their weapons in case their weapons are also disabled, right? It gives them an advantage to take out all of disruptors and phasers, and lets them use hand-to-hand combat weapons, and that gives them this massive advantage that will almost guarantee them victory over the enemy. So I think this makes a lot of sense. The Jem'Hadar and the Klingons, they prepare for situations when they will not be able to use disruptors and phasers. It is a thing in Star Trek. It happens from time to time in every show that disruptors cannot be used, that the phasers cannot be used. And in those situations, the Jem'Hadar and the Klingons can continue fighting, and they are more deadly in those situations since they train for it, unlike most other factions in Star Trek. And so these weapons are completely justified to my mind due to these reasons, because of these reasons. And I find it interesting. I do like this. This should tell us something, that the Jem'Hadar, they're not used to fighting fully armored opponents. They're used to fighting highly advanced factions that rely on technology and not body armor to keeping them alive, and they move in for the kill and stabbing the guy in the heart. And meanwhile the Klingons, they're going for the chinks in the armor and pushing the prongs into these deadly gaps that allows them the instant kill on the enemy. I think it makes perfect sense, and it's logical, and we're gonna explore how the Jem'Hadar and Klingons might use their weapons to reach close combat, and also we will also take a look after that who would win in a fight between a Jem'Hadar and a Klingon. So a very simple piece of graphic here. Here we have a corridor on a starship, narrow, tight spaces, no places to hide. You have, in this case, the Federation on the far end. It could be Cardassians, could be Bajorans, could be N1, Ferengi, Orions, you never know. But they usually have phaser rifles, and Romulans also have disruptor rifles, right? Larger weapons, not suitable for the tight confines. So, and who's ever up here are not as well trained in hand-to-hand combat as Klingons and Jem'Hadar. So what do they want to do? Well, they want to suppress the enemy up here. This is a kill zone. This corridor, it is a deadly funnel. So what they need to do is apply a lot of pressure on the enemy so they don't dare peek around the corner and open fire. And that is where these smaller weapons come into play, where multiple guys can hide behind the corner and open fire downrange, preventing who's ever around this corner to open fire, and then you can slowly advance, suppressing this corner until you're within reach or within range to charge in with your butlets, with your bayonets, or whatever. And when that happens, this will be the end result, as we've seen in some of the episodes. These guys, they have an advantage when you do open fire at range, but if they can use their smaller, deadly, powerful weapons to suppress the enemy, and they can move up and get into charge distance, then the game is over. And their superior training with these bladed weapons should win the day. And also, the compact disruptors will be very useful in close combat as well. You can fire them from the hip. You can fire them held tightly to your body. Meanwhile, everyone that relies on these longer rifles will struggle to be able to open fire at the enemy in such close proximity. So I think it makes perfect sense, and these tactics is probably what the Klingons and the Jem'Hadar rely on: suppression, advancing, and then rushing into combat, where their tight, compact weapons along with their bladed weapons gives them a massive advantage, and the enemy will more than likely be defeated in short order because of it. So now the big question. In the Dominion War, who wins the fight if a Klingon and a Jem'Hadar warrior goes face to face with their bladed weapons? For whatever reason, there's a dampening field in place. They can't rely on disruptors. They have to go toe to toe with their bladed weapons. Who will win? Well, let's explore. And we are gonna lean back on some testing done by Sellsword Arts. I'm gonna leave a link to this video down below. It is extremely interesting because they have a training Bat'leth along with a longer bladed weapon that has some better reach. And what they do find out is that the reach is the downside of the Bat'leth. As long as you can stab with a weapon, the Bat'leth is at a disadvantage. Now, the Jem'Hadar weapon is not as long as this blade here. I think it might end over here, so the Bat'leth might maybe be a bit longer than this weapon. I don't know, but it's definitely designed for thrusting. So if you can lunge out with this weapon, you might actually catch a Klingon off guard as he's handling his Bat'leth. And they did find out that the Bat'leth was at a disadvantage when someone was going after you with the stabs. So a Jem'Hadar might actually be at an advantage if he gets to stab you. The problem is, though, here, as what they're saying is this is an unarmed combat, unarmored combat. They're wearing protection to not get injured, but the premise is that these are two warriors not wearing any armor, and then of course the stabbing weapon overcomes the Bat'leth. The Bat'leth does land a couple of strikes, but the stabby weapon has an advantage over the Bat'leth in this situation. So going with the usual configuration of body armor and stuff like that, if the Jem'Hadar can land a couple of blows going past the Bat'leth and hit the head here, then the Klingon is really in trouble by the looks of it, going by these tests. But it became really interesting when they moved over to a premise where both warriors wore body armor, had armor, and you needed to move in and hit the chinks, the gaps in the suit of armor. And then the Bat'leth came out on top, hands down, and the longer pointy weapon was at a disadvantage. And as you can see here, they discovered this really cool attack that we haven't seen in any Star Trek show, and it is this grip, holding the Bat'leth at the top and then using it almost like a dagger, and not a long-bladed sword or glaive or what have you, or a polearm, but instead going for aimed strikes with the point like a dagger. And they do land. You can see here, here actually locks down the weapon. So imagine that this guy is the Jem'Hadar. The Klingon holds the Jem'Hadar bladed glaive, and the Klingon then uses the Mek'leth like this to get that point into the throat of the Jem'Hadar. Same here. The Klingon moves in and holds it like a dagger and manages to strike the Jem'Hadar in the armpit, scoring a deadly blow towards the lungs and maybe even a heart. Really fascinating, this fight. Again, the link to this video will be down below. And the conclusion is, if a Klingon moves in and wears full body armor going up a Jem'Hadar, then the Klingon, armed with a Mek'leth, has a tremendous advantage over a longer pointy weapon that is not as versatile in the grappling and hand-to-hand combat business of when two warriors are fully armored. So I'm thinking that in the Dominion War, the Klingons would eventually start wearing more and more armor and adopting helmets and what have you. And when so armed with their disruptive pistols and their Mek'leths, they would have a massive advantage over the Jem'Hadar in hand-to-hand combat. If they wore a full suit of armor, which I think they would adopt going up against the Jem'Hadar in the Dominion War. And they would more than likely win most of the hand-to-hand combat engagements. Yes, the Jem'Hadar can use stealth and cloak and what have you, but once the fighting starts in hand-to-hand combat, I think the Klingons would have a tremendous advantage. I think the Klingons would use the Tetrion particles that they could radiate enemy positions with to take out those Jem'Hadar disruptors, and then suit up and move in for the kill with the Mek'leths, where they had the advantage over the enemy. So I think in a fight between Jem'Hadar and Klingons, more times than not, Klingons would win those engagements wearing full suits of armor, where the Jem'Hadar stabby weapon was at a disadvantage, and the Klingons could bring the full might of the Mek'leth to bear and bring down those pesky Jem'Hadar. So in the end, I think these weapons are justified. There are numerous situations when disruptors and phasers won't work, and if you want to fight in those environments, then the Jem'Hadar and the Klingons are at the top of their game, and no one can stop them because no one trains for those combat situations to the same extent as Klingons and Jem'Hadar. And the weapons that they use, these small, compact, powerful weapons, are ideally suited for fighting on board starships and space stations, and they can use them, like I said, to suppress the enemy and then move up and get into hand-to-hand combat and win those engagements. Especially since most factions don't wear any heavy armor to withstand these weapons that the Jem'Hadar and the Klingons are using. And when they do clash like they did in the Dominion War, I think it's leaning into the Klingons' favor, that they would win most of those engagements if they armored up and put on helmets and stuff like that. Then the Mek'leth would come into its own, and they would be able to just walk over Jem'Hadar in those engagements more often than not. But that's gonna have to be it. I hope you found it interesting, and that I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Today's a good day to die. Maidak malenta. Jachmei wik kaume. Nu ilutach visma monsobe. Tumivnisbe kuswi chavjaj. Maidak mahavad lulachaswi chopfu. Hachtin op top on my shit. Chowi wik Onward to battle we fly, to vanquish our foes. With weapon in hand, we will not falter. We will stand firm, we will gain glory on the battlefield. We prove our worth, in death we earn our fame. For glory we charge. All enemies shall be slain. Onwards to battle we fly, to vanquish our foes. Today is a good day to die. My dak malenta, Jagmei wik kaume. Nu illo dag misma monchobe, tum mivnisme koswir chaviaj. My dak ma vadlola gashwir khoftuch, ben babong mashe, chuve wipong mama hir chu. Yachoch di ho, my dak malenta. Jagmei wik taume, da ja shegelume.